Now turning to East Africa, Sudan and South Sudan recently agreed to a deal on border security and oil production that will allow oil exports from South Sudan through Sudan to resume. The leaders of the two countries made the partial breakthrough after 4 days of talks, but did not resolve some key issues, including disputed regions. In part 2 of my interview with Akec Khoc, the South Sudanese ambassador to Washington, he talks about the importance of the deal.
Now we came to negotiate. We all need the oil to flow in the interest of South Sudan as well as in the interest of North Sudan, to create conditions of stability and peaceful coexistence. So South Sudan eventually has given what was concluded as the agreement with the hope that it will be implemented.
What was the impact on the ground? In fact, what can you say is the impact even now of that lack of the oil business for that period of time?
For South Sudan, the oil revenue amounted to or accounted for about 90% of the revenue. And therefore, without that revenue, South Sudan has been facing some difficulties or gaps in fulfilling her commitments to macroeconomic planning and provision. There were reserves, there were other non-oil revenue sources, but still the volume of the reduction was so great that there was a gap that needed to be filled.
For a time, it was said that in Southern Sudan, civil servants, at least at a certain level, are not being paid their salaries. Some have gone for 3 months without their salaries. Was this mostly because of lack of the oil revenue, or were there other reasons?
There was no lack of paying of salaries for 3 months. There has been a delay, maybe for a month, but not for 3 months. And the delay has been towards the passage of the budget. If there is no budget, you cannot be paid. So this was what delayed. It was not the lack of revenue. Although, yes, there has been a reduction in the availability of cash, but there was cash. And there is still cash.
There was that plan that had been announced that actually South Sudan could receive payments in advance for oil that will be delivered in the future, especially when a pipeline that is planned between South Sudan and the East African coast, Malindi, is complete. Was that ever actualized?
Not as far as I know. I've not heard of South Sudan's ability to get money before the oil was delivered.
Tell us a little bit about the unresolved issues between the North and South.
The border demarcation remains unresolved. And until the cooperation agreement is rectified, both in North and South Sudan, a commission to demarcate the border cannot start to function, cannot be even formed. So we still have a little hiccup in that area. But we are determined to continue the dialogue to a final agreement, because for our stability, there is need, absolute need for having the border demarcated. Although we are going in for porous borders, that means facility of movement between the two Sudans, because our people have been used to doing this over ages and should continue doing that.
How do you assess the international community's enthusiasm compared to before the referendum or years before, as you were clamoring for separation and everybody was around there, everybody was supporting South Sudan? How do you gauge where the level of enthusiasm is from the international community towards South Sudan?
I still believe that the international community is committed to helping the two Sudans get their stability for sustainable development, because any insecurity, any instability spills over to the neighboring countries and to the world at large. But I'm seeing little enthusiasm from some corners relative to the enthusiasm before 2005 and up to 2009-10.
That was Dr. Akec Khoc, the South Sudanese ambassador to Washington, speaking with us on In Focus.